There are certain words that can completely change the way a black woman is perceived before she even has had the opportunity to explain who she is. Now, depending on who is using those words, they can sound funny, affectionate, insulting, dismissive, or even dangerous because somewhere along the way, black women have become one of the few groups of women who can seemingly be criticized for being too much and not enough at exactly the same time.
Bougie, ratchet, ghetto are just a few of the labels that society places on black women.
No, not the average black girl, because the pigment in my skin is just a shade lighter than that black girl over there. You know the black girl over there, the black girl with the nappy hair, the black girls whose elbows can't skip a day without lotion, whose hearts and heads are filled up with self-hate and bottled up emotion. The cocoa brown girls who have to face society every day and be tough, because no matter how good they straighten their hair, their good is still not good enough. Oh, see, luckily for me, I don't fall in that category. See, they say I'm not the average black girl because I speak with so much class, and I don't have too much, but just enough ass, and not too much, but just enough pizzazz. You know, just a little bit of attitude, because you don't want to come off as one of those average black girls and come off as rude. You know, popping their gum and shaking their neck. Yeah, because those black girls get, like, no respect.
If she speaks in a certain way, dresses a certain way, lives in a certain neighborhood, enjoys certain things, or behaves outside of what society considers respectable, well, then she can quickly become ghetto. If she moves differently, if she speaks differently, earns more money, travels, enjoys luxury, changes neighborhoods, or decides that there are certain environments she simply doesn't want to participate in anymore, well, suddenly she's bougie. And somewhere between those two extremes sits another word that has become part of the cultural vocabulary. That's ratchet. But here's where this conversation becomes much more interesting, because what happens when these words stop describing behavior and start becoming identities that were assigned to people? What happens when a black woman walks into a room and someone has already decided who she is before she ever opens her mouth? And even more uncomfortable, what happens when some of the judgment is coming from inside of our own community? This is the conversation that I want to have today. The PBS program, A Seat at the Table, explored this idea in an episode titled Bougie, Ghetto, and Ratchet, Stereotypes of Black Women. Now, when I came across this conversation, something immediately stood out to me. These words may sound modern, but the pressure behind them, it is not. Black women have been navigating stereotypes about respectability and class, appearance, being physically expressive, education, and behavior for generations. This is not anything new. The terminology changes, the expectations change, but the judgment, well, that has been remarkably consistent. And by the end of this conversation, I think that we may realize that the real issue was never about a black woman that was bougie, ghetto, or ratchet. The real question is, who benefits from keeping her inside one of these boxes? Because that is where this gets complicated, and that is where I want to begin. Now, have you ever noticed how the moment a black woman steps into a room, the world is already waiting with a box to put her in? If she speaks in a certain way, carries a designer bag, or sets firm boundaries, well, she gets labeled bougie. If she expresses passion, speaks loudly, or wears her culture proudly, she gets hit with the word ghetto. If she dares to be unapologetic, expressive, and unbothered by mainstream respectability, well, then the world slaps the label ratchet on her before she can even finish a sentence.
I'm still trying to define the word ratchet. How do you define ratchet? And I know I'm not the only person in this room. What is ratchet?
Okay, so you saw Girls Trip, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you remember the character that Tiffany Haddish played?
Yes.
She was the wild one who walks and is like, ow! that's
Wild.
ratchet as hell. Like you walk in and you fill the entire room with all kinds of color and language and body movement.
My mother would just call that being loud.
Now, these three words get tossed around every single day in casual conversations on social media and across popular culture. But if we pull back the layers, we have to ask ourselves, who created these boxes in the first place, and why are Black women expected to fit neatly into any one of them? Well, today we're diving deep into a topic inspired by a powerful episode of the PBS's A Seat at the Table. We are breaking down the origin, the impact, and the real truth behind bougie, ghetto, and ratchet, and why it's time to dismantle the habit of letting these labels define Black womanhood. Now, to understand where we are today, we have to take a step back and look at how we got here. The desire to categorize Black women is not a modern internet phenomenon. It is actually rooted in a long history of systemic control and respectability politics. So for generations, society created strict rules about how Black people, and specifically Black women, needed to present themselves in order to be seen as human, safe, or worthy of dignity. Now, this created a dynamic where survival became tied to performance. And that brings us to the term bougie, short for bourgeois. Now, on one side, it celebrates achievement, refinement, and self-care. Now, on the other side, it is often weaponized as an accusation of turning your back on the community, pretending to be better than others, or trying to assimilate into Eurocentric standards of acceptability.
So I could be standing in front of Black people, and Black people may think that I'm bougie. Hard to believe, but there are moments when folks think that Deneen is a little bougie, which I think is crazy.
Well, how do you define bougie?
I've been told so.
No,
Lord,
seriously.
this is a big issue. I'm gonna just tell you.
No, because you gotta define it. But
Yeah,
what is
it's
bougie?
different for
fluent.
everybody, but
I'm fluent in bougie.
bougie, bougie, when it has a negative connotation, is when you behave as if the people that you're talking to are not as good as you.
Right.
Right? Like you are better than other people. I have been called bougie my entire life.
Yep.
And I never understood why it was a bad thing to speak the King's English. I never understood why it was a bad thing to hold my head high. I never understood why it was a bad thing to advocate for myself.
Now, when a Black woman is labeled bougie, she is often being policed for setting high standards or stepping outside of what others expect her to be. It forces her into a position where achieving success or preferring a certain lifestyle is somehow framed as a betrayal of her identity. Pressure to balance professional success with cultural authenticity creates an exhausting tightrope walk where no matter how you speak, dress, or act, someone will claim you and say that you are doing too much or trying too hard. And then we have the word ghetto. Well, historically, a ghetto referred to a specific geographic area where marginalization and economic disinvestment forced people into concentrated spaces. Now, over time, the word was stripped of its structural definition and repurposed as a slur to mock urban culture, working class realities, and distinct cultural expressions. When applied to Black women, the word ghetto is used to invalidate her intelligence, dismiss her anger, and shrink her entire identity down to a loud stereotype. Now, what makes this label so unfair is the hypocrisy behind it. The very styles, the hair trends, the nail art, and the linguistic expressions that get labeled ghetto when worn by Black women suddenly get rebranded as high fashion, edgy, or trendy when adopted by mainstream media and outside cultures.
What do you think you're stereotyped as? You said just a moment ago, people sometimes think you're ratchet, but
It really just depends on who I'm standing in front of. So if I'm standing in front of some Black folks and I'm talking like this, then I'm bougie. If I'm standing in front of white folks, I'm putting on airs when I'm talking this way. But if I decide today, I don't feel like messing with none of y'all, and I'm gonna stand here and I'm gonna recite Jay-Z lyrics, and I'm gonna be at my desk like this, and then I'm ghetto or ratchet. ratchet.
Now, you've heard me say this before, that when a black woman originates a trend, it is criticized. When mainstream culture appropriates it, it's celebrated. Now, this double standard exposes the fact that the problem was never the style itself, but rather the double standards applied to the person that was wearing it. That brings us to ratchet. Now, in recent years, ratchet has undergone a complex evolution, originally used as a derogatory variation of the word wretched. It was designed to shame women who did not conform to traditional notions of modesty or composure. It targeted women who were loud, free-spirited, or visually distinct. However, within pop culture and hip-hop, the word was embraced and flipped into a badge of unbothered authenticity. For many, ratchet became a celebration of shedding the heavy, suffocating coat of respectability politics. It became a way to say that I do not exist to make you comfortable, and I will express my joy, my energy, and my presence on my own terms. Yet, despite this cultural reclamation, mainstream society still uses ratchet to dismiss black women's humanity. It became a tool to compress multidimensional human beings into a single caricature. Now, when media outlets and reality shows amplify these moments, they often highlight conflict over substance because dramatic caricatures generate higher ratings. Now, this creates that feedback loop where the algorithm rewards chaos while complex, nuanced depictions of black womanhood struggle to find the same visibility. Now, this brings us to the core issue, the false division created between these three terms.
And the reality is very simple. First of all, they look at us, and that is how they first determined whether or not you are someone I want to deal with. And that means, are you middle class? Are you lower class? And as educated as you are, a lawyer, what's the reaction you think most white people have to you when they see you on the street?
Let me tell you, I don't know, but, and I'm gonna be as righteous as I possibly can just to put a little extra on it. I don't care what they think. I'm done defining myself by what white people think. I'm done with that. So we can sit here and say, but that's not what they hear when they see you, or white people expect you to be a certain kind of way. But outside of being living through a strategy, like I will take it on as a strategy to maybe make more money, to advance my career, but I'm not going to define it as wrong.
When we allow society to divide black women into bougie, ghetto, or ratchet, we reinforce the idea that black womanhood is a monolith. The truth is that no woman fits cleanly into just one category. A woman can love high fashion and classical music while at the same time blasting Southern hip hop and rocking long acrylic nails. She can have multiple degrees, navigate corporate boardrooms, and still enjoy the unfiltered, vibrant culture of her neighborhood.
This culture that we like to call black culture, and now when you act the way you would act in your community, but you go out into a majority white world, you're looked down upon. And that's by design, because the whole design was to make black people feel inferior. So everything about being black then became inferior. The way that black women talk, the dialect that we use. In the workplace, in corporate America, we were told that we're not legitimate. And it's not because it was different. It was because it benefits white society for black people to be subjugated. Right.
These categories were never designed to elevate us. They were built to keep us monitoring each other. Respectability politics tells us that if we act quiet enough, dress more conservative, and speak softly enough, society will treat us fairly. But history has shown us time and time again that respectability does not protect you from bias. Shaming each other through these labels only divides the collective power and richness of our shared experiences. The work going forward is about reclaiming the right to be multidimensional. It is about recognizing that every expression of black womanhood, whether quiet or loud, luxury loving or grassroots, traditional or untamed, it holds value, it holds history, and it holds human dignity. Now, when we stop policing one another and stop internalizing the labels pushed onto us by external narratives, then we open up room for genuine freedom and authentic expression. So at the end of the day, Black womanhood cannot be contained in a 3-word vocabulary. We are allowed to be complex. We are allowed to change our minds, and we are allowed to embody every single part of who we are without asking for permission or apologizing to anyone. Now, I want to pass this conversation over to you. Have you ever felt boxed in by these labels or found yourself code switching just to navigate a space? What steps can we take to break down these stereotypes in our everyday lives? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. And let's keep this conversation respectful, real, and uplifting. I want to thank you for stopping by the occasional commentary. And if you found any value in this video, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.
I grew up in an era where my mother taught me to walk on both sides, in both lanes. I knew what to do to get the job, to get the grades, because being in an integrated school system and in early integration, a Black girl had to be a certain way. It's almost like she was a Black girl, but really acting like a white girl in order to get what she needed. But then when she came home, it was being able to throw that persona off and be the person you were.